The three defense barriers of our immune system. COVID-19. The immune system is a complex system that is responsible for protecting us against infections and foreign substances. There are three lines of defense. 1. The first is to keep invaders out. Through the skin, mucous membranes, etc. 2. The second line of defense consists of non-specific ways to defend against pathogens that have broken through the first line of defense, such as with inflammatory response and fever. 3. The third line of defense is mounted against specific pathogens that are causing disease. B cells produce antibodies against bacteria or viruses in the extracellular fluid, while T cells kill cells that have become infected. The immune system is closely tied to the lymphatic system, with B and T lymphocytes being found primarily within lymph nodes. Tonsils and the thymus gland are also considered lymph organs and are involved in immunity. We often don't realize how effective the immune system is until it fails or malfunctions. A good way to start understanding the immune system is to liken it to a castle. A castle, like our bodies, is a fortress. A castle has three lines of defense. You want to know how your body really defends itself when a single virus enters, a microbe, a pathogen or something that is going to infect us inside. I am going to explain to you in this video how your immune system is really structured, how it is organized, how it communicates and how it is very important. For you to understand it and to know how is the response of our organism to a situation like the one that is happening now of coronavirus or virus, then we are going to study it in detail in this video. The immune system can be compared to when we lived in the Middle Ages and there were great walled castles. Each castle had its own soldiers, its own defenses. Like our bodies, is a fortress. A castle has three lines of defense. 1. First, a moat and drawbridge. The first line of defense in our bodies are physical and chemical barriers, our skin, stomach acids, mucus, tears, vaginal opening, of which the last three mostly produce lysozyme to destroy harmful incoming pathogens. 2. Second, sentries and archers who stand on the castle wall. In our bodies, the second line of defense is non-specific immune responses, macrophages, neutrophils, interferons, and complement proteins. This line of defense also includes fever and inflammatory response as non-specific defenses. 3. Third, soldiers within the castle. Our third line of defense is specific immune responses, T cells and B cells. There are many types of each which work like a close-knit team to destroy pathogens. The body does the same, defends itself from the outside through the structuring and formation of a series of barriers of a series of structures that defend us when something strange enters that can harm us. Well, the first defense barrier is the castle walls, and this defense barrier is formed by what is understood as the mucous membranes. If we look when we enter, imagine that thief or that microbe, that virus, that pathogen, that wants to enter our body. First, our body is going to defend itself with a series of mucous membranes that are distributed throughout our body, and that is the defense barrier. We have mucosa in the digestive system. Your entire digestive system is made up of mucosa, from the mouth to where the stool comes out in the anus, so inside there is a tissue associated with structures called lymphoid, which is made up of series of substances that help to defend ourselves against this pathogen. For example, our intestine, where the microbiota is, which are a series of bacteria and microorganisms that live within us. It is very important that they are there and live in the mucosa. The mucosa is important for it to be good to defend ourselves against this first intruder who wants to enter in our body. Another place where we have more mucosa and more immune system in that first barrier is in the skin. The skin is also another barrier and another wall that helps when a pathogen wants to enter our body and our organism from a first plating, and then we have other mucosae that are in the respiratory system, in the genital system, the ocular system, in the auditory system. In all, there are mucous membranes where there is immune tissue that helps this first entry of this pathogen. Let's have it more controlled. Another place where we have more mucosa and more immune system in that first barrier is in the skin. Secondly, we would have the second barrier. The innate response is the innate immune system, where our body will perform everything that is a function of the first immune response. The function of innate immunity is the recognition of microbes and pathogens, that what they do is trigger a response at the cellular level and at the humoral level, characterized by the activation of some cells like the ones we have seen. Like neutrophils, macrophages, monocytes, eosinophils, and synthesis, also of substances that cause inflammation. You have to think that when there is an immune response, an inflammatory situation is generated so that all those cells that we are talking about going there and have an activation, a fight, against that pathogen. In that fight, those inflammatory substances are generated that are intended to control the infection. There are many situations in which when there is an innate immune response, a substance called histamine is produced. Histamine generates redness, generates inflammation, generates flushing, generates more volume. We have some cells of the innate immune system such as eosinophils that are responsible for breaking down this histamine. But others, when they are activated such as mast cells or basophils, increase histamine production, and this causes all these situations of redness, inflammation, infection, and proliferation of all this volume in our area where the infection is. So when this first defense barrier, these mucous membranes that we have seen that are in the intestine, in the skin of the respiratory system, and others do not manage to placate the pathogen, the second defense barrier, that is the innate immune system, will act. In the innate immune system, there are cells dendritic which has a very important role. They are cells that belong to our defenses that are responsible for doing what the presentation of antigens is, that is, they are the cells that are going to collaborate with the next system, that is the adaptive or specific immune system. Imagine here we have the pathogen. These cells, what they are going to do is they are going to mark the pathogen when it is a pathogen that must already be eliminated by specific immunology. They will mark it so that the other adaptive system produces a series of cells, a series of white blood cells, a series of lymphocytes, which are T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, so that specifically, this pathogen can be finished and counteracted. This adaptive immune system cannot act until the dendritic cells have not specifically presented the pathogen, and this can take 2 to 3 days. Until the adaptive immune system generates these specific antibodies. If instead, the dendritic cell is in a healthy environment because there is a good quality of mucous membranes, there is a good quality of the skin, there is a good quality of intestinal health. What you are going to do is that they will favor the production of a type of molecules called TREG that are regulatory cells that will help to have a balance in our entire immune system, and that there are no allergies and appearances of inflammatory immune responses or the appearance of autoimmune diseases. In the case that it is a cell that is derived in something strange like the one we have seen previously, then the dendritic cells are going to derive to combat molecules to try to neutralize them in a more specific or adaptive way, and this is when our body already has to recognize exactly the antigen that has been marked to generate a series of antibodies and a series of cells that specifically fight against it. This is where we find that the specific response is the one that fights against viruses. Also, those known as the elements in the entire community of parasites, pathogens, and also some bacteria, some fungi, and with all this situation we already have 3 defense barriers. The first barrier we have spoken is the mucosal barrier, that is a more physical barrier, a barrier of the innate system. Imagine that the innate is how firefighters are, the first to arrive at the place where the fire is. Then we have a third barrier, which is the specific one. A specific fire of a type of fuel, so we need very specific firefighters to come and pay for that type of fire, because that would be our third barrier. What's going on with him, COVID-19? Well, the COVID-19, which is a very new situation for this whole system, because the third barrier, that is the one that should have started to defend ourselves against the coronavirus, is a system that needs maturation and has a very slow response, needing to have been exposed, have recognized that antigen to that type of virus to have generated throughout your life. What are the antibodies, the defenses to be able to, once you become infected? Once you get this virus, you have the necessary defenses already created with memory, because this specific system is a system that has memory. On the other hand, the innate has no memory, does not need memory, is crazier. Let's answer, then with the COVID-19 we have not been exposed previously, and the body has not generated all this immunological work of memory to be able to respond. So now we need to be in a phase of buying time so that the immunology of each individual that is in contact with this virus generates these antibodies, and, on the other hand, the entire scientific and medical community develops substances such as vaccines to generate this immunological memory in people who have not been infected, and also go generating medications and drugs that know what the action of this virus is. Really is, because we said it has the free way to enter the DNA of the cells that most affects in this case, because it is seeing that they are alveolar cells and can multiply to 1 super fast, because there is not a whole system, there has not been a whole job of our immune system to defend it. That is why we are constantly being treated, and it is important that we take great care of the first defense barriers of our digestive system, from our skin, from our mucosa. Because when all this is fine and we have more regulatory T cells, we help our immune system to be more balanced and stronger and the virus. When it is not so aggressive, when a person has more affected barriers, as we see the most vulnerable population, as we now find older people who have weak mucous membranes of the respiratory system, who have an inflamed digestive system, where there is no good mucosa, where there is no good immunology. Because of this, it makes the virus have a much greater capacity for multiplication, expansion, and damage, so it is important for us to understand how all of our immune systems are structured. And how it is coordinated, because we think that between the innate and the adaptive systems they speak between the mucosa is also not that everything goes separately, all this is intertwined and one helps another to be better. Mucosa helps the innate system to have good quality, and then the innate system does have a good quality when the adaptive system uses him to engulf and to end all the expression. Because in this genetic and proliferative case of this virus will ask us to recruit the immune system. The adaptive system will ask the immune system with all these substances and cells helping him, because he is the one who is going to mark these pathogens for the innate system to end. So I hope that the information on the immune system of these three barriers of this castle that you have in your body that you have to take care of and pamper very well has become a little clearer. And I hope to continue sharing with you videos of how to have each of these points and provide what you really need with our habits and our behaviors. So we see each other in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to receive a notification when a new video comes out. I would be very appreciated. From the bottom of our hearts. Please comment below, what is your opinion? Top playlist.